Hi, everybody. So the article that I read is titled Critical Race Theory, Racial Microaggressions, and Campus Racial Climate, the Experience of African American College Students. And I think this was kind of tied into the reading a little bit because, or a lot actually, because it talks about the college experience for African American students and what they, as a group, deal with in predominantly white colleges. So the article goes on to talk about how there's a sample of students that they took and worked with, and basically just had them in a qualitative design write down and report their findings and what they dealt with as an African American student. Um, and some of the big things that they hit on are what is a microaggression? A microaggression can be a verbal or nonverbal. I mean, it can literally be somebody telling the student that I don't want to work with you because you're black, which is what part of the article talks about. Our students going to college and thinking, hey, this doesn't happen in higher education. People get it, and sometimes they don't. Um, it could be a nonverbal where the professor tells the class, hey, pick a partner, and they don't want to pick an African American student to work with. So it can be a said thing or a non-said thing, and so there's kind of four big points that the article hits on. The first one is just racial discrimination and how students talk about they feel like because there may not be a lot of African American students in the classroom, and the professor wants to talk about racism or talk about race, they think that it doesn't really affect the African American students in there because there's not a lot of students in there. It's kind of like there is, the article goes kind of to say that there's kind of power in numbers, and if there's not a lot of students of a certain race or ethnicity, then the professor doesn't really think about it a whole lot. Um, they talk about feeling invisible, and there's fewer and there's less likely to address a concern there because, again, there's not a lot of students. The other is the response. So, the response that the article talks about is creation of counter spaces. So going on campus to other places or off campus and creating a space that you don't feel judged or you don't feel like someone's watching you because of your skin color or your background or anything like that. So the response in this article was the creation of these counter spaces. It also talks about their ability to perform academically. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we, talked about this week. And the biggest thing that the article talked about was needing support from other students that were dealing with this. So students that, there's a African American girl in here in the article that talks about how she leans on one of her friends who's also dealing with the same thing to get through because she, at one point she's like ready to quit, like leave the university, is tired of all the racism, and is just ready to quit. And she kind of leans on her best friend and, her peer to really see, okay, I can get through this. I'm bigger than this and I can get through this. The final thing it talks about, has it improved or worsened racism on campus? And it really it doesn't say that it has improved, but it doesn't really go on to say that it has worsened either. With the microaggressions, sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what people mean, but then sometimes it's super easy to do it too. So the article really talks about how it hasn't completely worsened. It's just kind of taken a different form, and people have um, taken on different ways to show racism other than just blatant, out loud, just ugly um, acts of hatred. It can be just not even saying anything at all. So the article was very interesting to read. The link's in my post, and I encourage you to go read it. So to kind of to flip things a little bit. So I've been hired as the dean, And one of the things that I think I'm still going to stay with my topic of African American students coming into college with, like the book talks about, coming from areas where high schools don't prepare them, maybe inner city areas where the high schools are not preparing these students to be successful in college. And one of the things that I, as the dean, want to work on is making sure that that first year experience for students is going to be successful, because when you look at the success of the first year, you can kind of go on to see, is the student going to be successful from here on out? And I actually, without even kind of looking at the book, my actual job is working in college athletics on an academic side, and so we actually look at data like this to see and say, is the student after this semester or this year going to be successful based on their grades? And we also look at their incoming scores too to see, yes, they're going to be successful. We've totally got to put them with tutors, all kinds of different methods to help. And so, kind of going back on me being the dean, I think what would be super helpful and would be willing to implement is a transitional program for African American students that are coming from areas that we have pinpointed to know where, if they're coming out of a certain high school, a certain region, a certain area, that we know that their test scores, they're more apt to not be as high and as successful as their counterparts within the school. And so the transition program would be during the summer, the second summer session, so a July class month, or just this semester leading up to fall, bring these students in and have kind of an introductory. So they would take, 6 hours worth of credits. Maybe we work with them and take a more difficult class and an easier class to work together, so that you kind of get both sides of it. And then also have a welcome to college kind of course too, that's not even for a grade. It's just, the instructor or either myself are going to meet with these kids and say, hey, this is what college is like. It's not like high school. There's a lot more work involved. And to get these students on a path where they understand what college is like, so they get it, and they are away from home. So we take them out of the environment that hasn't been as successful and bringing them into one that can be, and telling them, hey, this is what it's going to be like for the next 4 years. But also within that transitional or that bridge program, assigning them an advisor or a faculty member that can be a mentor to them throughout the 4 years. The idea is they get out in 4 years. The idea is we all got out in 4 years. But 4.5 years, so that there's someone they can go to about not only the social aspect, which is a huge part, but their academic side as well. And having that one person they can go to talk about these things, along with the bridge program, is how I, as a dean, would really try to make the students as successful as possible. I think I'm a firm believer in being very much proactive instead of reactive, and I think working with a student before school even starts for them, so starting meaning like that fall that they start in school, and getting them prior and making them successful then, or even giving them the tools, is the most effective way to make a student successful in college. So one of the things that I'm interested in is, especially with African American students or students of a Latina background, if if you have ever experienced any sort of racism within the classroom, or felt disadvantaged because of um, the area that you are from, as the book says. The book states that African American students are already at a disadvantage when they get to college because maybe they are first generation students, which is first generation is kind of what I did my APA practice paper on, and it did touch on predominantly African American students are. And so my question is, has anyone experienced these things? Because I definitely have not. I've definitely been in a situation where I didn't, in my undergraduate, I didn't even see these things. And so kind of reading the book has really opened my eyes to everything, which is kind of embarrassing that I'm at this age and just now kind of really taking a step back and realizing this. So I know it's kind of a heavy-hitting question, and I truly don't want anyone to take my question the wrong way, but I would just love to hear just kind of personal experiences of my classmates, if any of these issues that I talked about or we've read about have actually come to life for any of you all. So I am excited to hear, and I hope that I did not bore you completely with my YouTube video. And yeah, I totally look forward to seeing everybody's videos. Thanks.